What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday afternoon we got an update for Modern Warfare 3, and it was a fairly minor update, but there was some weapon balancing in there. So today we're going to be going through this in great detail, showing you guys exactly what things look like before and after. And diving right in, before we get into the weapon balancing, let's cover all of the miscellaneous things that they mentioned in the patch notes. And the first thing was just an update on Ricochet anti-cheat. Basically, there was a rumor floating around that Ricochet was actually completely disabled over this past weekend. And apparently this was just due to the fact that they took down a single telemetry system, which means the anti-cheat was actually active, but many people picked up on the fact that this telemetry system wasn't responding anymore or wasn't visible, and therefore they thought the entire anti-cheat was taken down. And then they mentioned they did ban over 6,000 accounts between February 16th and February 20th. So it doesn't really seem to be an update as far as they improved Ricochet or anything like that. They're just confirming that it wasn't offline. In either case, it seems something really needs to be done, especially on the Warzone side of things, which I know I don't really cover. I don't play Warzone, but I have seen a lot of clips lately, and it seems like we're at another one of those peaks of cheating at the moment. And I know it goes through peaks and valleys. At the moment, it seems like the cheat developers are currently on top. Then I'm sure they'll update Ricochet, which will help things for a little while, and then it'll come back up again. And it's just a constant back and forth there, but that's the little update they gave on Ricochet. Next, we got a few bug fixes in the UI. Basically, there are a few issues they resolved that were causing players to be kicked back to the main menu. So if you view the Horde Hunt event, for instance, for some people, that would just kick them back to the main menu. For me, I noticed this. If I tried to edit a custom mod that was already created, that would also kick me back to the main menu. That appears to be working just fine for me now. Also, apparently saving custom mods in the Gunsmith will no longer remove certain camos, but I have seen a clip floating around where this is still happening to at least some people with the Interstellar camo. Additionally, they fixed that little bug that would pop up sometimes where the killstreak icon in-game on the bottom right, it would turn red after dying to a cruise missile. And this is something I saw happen a lot, and I didn't actually realize what was causing this. So apparently they have fixed that, and that's nice to see just because that was a little bit visually jarring. And then again, they stated that they fixed the field of view bug where your FOV will be set much higher than intended when you infill into a map. I think this is something they had to handle on like a map-to-map basis, because I know they fixed it for some maps, but then people were still experiencing it on other maps. So hopefully this is it, and they've finally taken care of it on all maps. But please let me know in the comments if you still experience this FOV bug when you infill into a match. After that, there was a mention of them adjusting spawn points on Underpass to prevent players from respawning outside of the playable area in headquarters. I just wanted to mention on top of this, even though this was the only spawn adjustment that was mentioned in these patch notes, they've definitely been tweaking spawns here or there. Not necessarily with this exact update, but I've definitely been noticing plenty of changes here or there, especially in Domination, which is my preferred game mode. I know they've absolutely been tweaking things, and I have seen some improvements on some maps. Other maps, I think they took things way too far the other direction, like Subbase, for instance. It's super spawn trappable now in Domination. But I just wanted to keep you guys updated here. They are absolutely making spawn tweaks in the background, and they're just not mentioning it in the patch notes. Next, there's a handful of bugs that are game mode specific. So in Control, during that transition period into the final round, the incorrect team will no longer be displayed as defending. In Cutthroat, sometimes the flag capture point wouldn't spawn in overtime. They've apparently resolved that. With Team Gun Game, they addressed an issue causing players to become stuck without a weapon. And in War, they fixed an issue causing players to lose control after using a turret and smoke airdrop simultaneously. After that, we've got a few changes to equipment, field upgrades, and killstreaks. With the Shock Stick Tactical, now the tactical camera and portable radar field upgrades are affected by enemy shock sticks. For the trophy system field upgrade, now ally bomb drones will no longer be targeted and destroyed, which I had no idea was happening. And then finally, with the Guardian SC killstreak, they address an issue that was preventing the movement speed penalty from properly applying to affected players. And there we go, that wraps it up for the miscellaneous changes. Now let's get into the weapon and attachment balancing, which is the main portion of this video. And the first thing is they actually buffed the MTZ-556, which is interesting because this gun hasn't been touched at all since launch. But the first thing they did here is they decreased the initial gun kick, as well as just generally decreased recoil while firing. And as you can see here, pre-patch versus post-patch, there is definitely a more predictable recoil path, a little bit less side-to-side bounce, and we don't have that crazy jump after the first shot fired. You get a much tighter grouping with those initial shots. So you should notice the MTZ-556 being quite a bit more accurate. But that's not all. We also saw a couple range buffs here. You can see with our second damage range, our 5-shot kill potential, that went from 34.3 meters up to 36.8 meters, and then our minimum damage range drop-off point, went from 41.9 meters up to 47 meters. So not a massive difference in this area by any means, but that recoil change is definitely going to be noticeable. And I think this is quite interesting because the MTZ-556, in my opinion, was a great gun before this update, and now it's a little bit better even, so definitely give it a shot after this update, and you might be very pleasantly surprised. Next up, they already made an adjustment to the Jack Maglift kit on the Haymaker, which literally just came out yesterday morning. And unfortunately, I hadn't gotten around to doing all my testing yet. I was planning on doing that today for a video. So just want to give you guys a heads up. I will be covering this kit in great detail in tomorrow's video, unless something more time sensitive happens to pop up, like another patch, for instance. So I can tell you guys what they changed in the patch notes here, but I don't have the pre-patch testing to compare to yet. But with this, they decreased our aim down sight spread by 20%, so it went from 3 degrees per second down to 2.4 degrees per second. Our fire rate was increased from 357 rounds per minute up to 500 rounds per minute, so that's actually quite a big buff. However, they did decrease our damage pellet count from 8 to 5. They also restricted the use of ammunition attachments when using this kit. And something that wasn't stated in the patch notes, but I know changed on the advanced stats, our target flinch, so the amount of flinch we deal to enemy players, this went from 0.8 newtons pre-patch to 0.4 newtons post-patch. So that's actually an additional nerf to this. So overall, based on what I'm seeing in the patch notes here, it doesn't appear that they've just straight up nerfed this kit. I think they just adjusted it and kind of reworked it a little bit, so it's better in some areas and worse in others. In either case, let's get into the sniper rifle category, and with the Longbow, using the Pro 99 long barrel, with that barrel specifically, our aim down sight time pre-patch was 550 milliseconds, now it's 580 milliseconds, so a bit of a nerf to that barrel specifically. And then another thing they've done is with the Jack Tyrant 7.62 kit on the sniper rifle, this is the one that allows you to use the iron sight, they've now just locked the ammunition, bolts, and magazine attachments, which is good because pre-patch, if you tried to use those, you could put them on the gun, but they wouldn't actually do anything to the gun at all. So while this adjustment has no effect on the performance of the gun in-game, it's just going to prevent you from wasting an attachment slot by putting on an attachment that doesn't actually do anything. Now finally, for weapon-specific balancing, with the tier handgun using the Jack Beholder rifle kit, they reduced some of the penalties on this pretty drastically. So our base movement speed penalty went from 10% to 8%, so our base movement speed pre-patch was 4.6 meters per second, now it's 4.7 meters per second. And more importantly, our sprint speed penalty used to be 20%, which was insane, now it's just 8%. So pre-patch, we could only sprint at 4.64 meters per second, which is not a very fast sprint speed. That's actually slow for a base movement speed, and I really noticed that when swapping over to this. You were typically far better off sprinting with your primary weapon rather than this secondary. That is now 5.5 meters per second, which is much more appropriate. It's still not a really fast sprint speed, but it's at least tolerable and not really jarring when you switch over to a secondary and have it slow you down more than an LMG would. On top of that, they also decreased the bullet velocity penalty from 100% to 50%. So pre-patch, our bullet velocity while using this kit was 310 milliseconds. Now it's 465 milliseconds, which is quite a nice buff there. And with that, this leaves us with one last change that they made here for multiplayer, and this was to the Canted laser. They fixed that little trick that you could take advantage of on the Haymaker and Riveter shotgun that I've been sharing in my gun guides. Essentially, pre-patch with this, if you aim down sight with a canted laser, it would completely eliminate your aim down sight spread and turn it to 0, which meant all of your pellets would go in the exact same spot every single time you pulled the trigger. Now you can see that that's obviously not the case. However, it's still better than hip firing, and I wanted to do a bit more testing here, and I did find out that this appears to be now matching your standard aim down sight spread. If you weren't using the canted laser and you were just aiming down sight, this is the amount of spread that you are now seeing while using the canted laser and trying to aim down sight, but just going canted. And that one, honestly, I feel is a bit unfortunate. I thought that was a neat trick that made the Riveter and the Haymaker a lot more viable, and it made for some interesting builds as well. I kind of get what they were going for. It was pretty clear that this was likely a bug, but just know that canted laser trick no longer works. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for everything that changed with yesterday afternoon's updates in Modern Warfare 3's multiplayer. Overall, nothing too major here. It's nice to see some bug fixes and some improvements here or there. And also, I was fairly surprised to see a buff to the MTZ-556 because, like I said, I thought that was a great gun before the patch, but now it's even better. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this patch in those comments down below. Are you guys generally happy with these updates, or not so much? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.